A handful of people pick their way across a factory yard in Hiroshima, looking for a body. It is the third morning after the bomb. They know whose body they are looking for. She works in the personnel department here, and nobody has seen her since the morning it fell. They find her in the courtyard, under a piece of roofing somebody has propped over her. Her left leg is broken underneath her, and she has been lying under there 2 days and 2 nights. She is alive. 3 mornings ago, the building she worked in came down on top of her, and the beam that held the floor up came down with it. Her name is Toshiko Sasaki. She is 20 years old. 9 years from this morning, she makes a decision about the rest of her life. Sometime after that, a woman in a room on the far side of this city asks her what she would do if she were told she had failed and had to leave. Her answer is 1 sentence long. Everything between this morning and that room is other people deciding what her life is going to be. Two years before that morning, her parents went looking for a husband for her. They found one. She met him. She liked him. Both families agreed, and then the army sent the young man to China. Before he went, the two of them rented a house with an address on it, standing empty, waiting for the pair of them. She was a clerk in the personnel department of the East Asia Tin Works. She had a wage and a family and a man in China and an address that was already hers. It is 8:15 in the morning on the 6th of August, 1945. Toshiko Sasaki has just sat down at her desk. She turns her head away from the windows to say something to the girl at the next desk. The room fills with light. She does not move. She stays in her chair, and for a long moment she cannot make herself do anything at all. The plant is just under a mile from the middle of it. Then the building starts coming down on her. The ceiling drops. The wooden floor of the story above her breaks into splinters and comes through, and the people who were standing on it come down with it, and the roof over their heads follows them. And behind her, the bookcases swing forward and go over, and everything in them comes down on top of her, and her left leg twists and breaks underneath her as she goes. And down on top of all of it comes the beam. Then there is nothing at all, for about 3 hours. When she comes back, the beam is lying across her, and she cannot move any part of herself that matters. She is 20 years old, and there is a beam on top of her, and there is nobody in the building to call to. Men she has never met lift the beam off her, and dig her out, and carry her clear. They prop a piece of roofing over her at the edge of the courtyard, and they lay 2 badly hurt strangers down beside her. Then they go, because there are thousands of people in this city in exactly her condition, and it is still only the middle of the morning. She is under that roof for 2 days and 2 nights. Her parents are dead. So is one of her brothers. They carry her to a relief station. The people there are arguing about whether to take the leg off. They leave it on. They put her on a boat to a military hospital, and she is going to be lame for the rest of her life. The man she had rented the house with came back from China alive. He wrote to her. He wrote to her about butterflies. A man who survives a war and writes to a woman in a hospital about butterflies is a man who is going to marry that woman. That is what those letters are for. The letters keep coming. Her leg is red and swollen to the hip. The doctors cannot set the brakes. One of them opens it and puts a rubber pipe down into it to drain out what is inside. The letters get shorter. His family talks it over. They have second thoughts. Their son is not going to marry a bomb survivor and a cripple. He never comes to see her. The letters stop. There is a priest sitting beside her bed, and she has a question for him. She has a shrunken leg. She has a room full of people in her own condition. She has a window, and most of a city missing out of it. She takes in the whole of it with one sweep of her hand, and she asks him this: if your God is so good and kind, how can he let people suffer like this? By the beginning of 1946, she had been moved into a hospital set up inside a primary school, and she was growing more and more depressed and morbid. She seemed little interested in living. A friend of hers had asked the priest to go and see her. He was a German Jesuit from a mission on the other side of Hiroshima, and he had been in the city himself on the morning it fell. He was weak most of the time now, and in pain a good deal of it. He walked long distances anyway, on foot, to sit with people who could not come to him. He walked to her. The first visit he did not mention religion at all. This was the second. He told her that man is not now in the condition God intended for him, that he has fallen from grace through sin. That was not a question she had asked him. That was a verdict. He had an answer ready. He would go on having them for years. They discharged her at the end of April. She went to live on a hillside at Koi with her younger brother and her younger sister, looking down over the ruins of the city where her parents and her brother had died. There was nothing much for her to do up there except read and look out. One morning that September, she stepped out of the house. There was a bamboo grove behind it. The sun was on the leaves, and bamboo leaves are small and thin, and they moved in that light like minnows in water. Something went through her that she had not felt in longer than she could remember. It took her breath away, standing there. Joy. And then she heard her own voice saying the Lord's Prayer. She was baptized that month. Her younger brother was hit by a police car. 4 ribs, both legs. His nose caved in. He lost the sight of one eye. She was going to be supporting her brother for the rest of his life, which meant she now knew exactly what the rest of hers was for. That was 8 years after the bomb. Almost everything she had by then she had built in the 6 years before the police car. It started at a beach, where she met a young woman training to be a nun, who told her about an orphanage in Hiroshima called the Garden of Light. Sasaki put her brother and her sister into it. Then she took a job there herself, looking after other people's children in the building where her own family now lived. After a year, they moved her across the water to Kyushu, to a children's home in Beppu for proper training. She rode a train half an hour each way to sit in university classes with people who had never had a year taken out of their lives. She passed the examination that qualified her to teach nursery school. The leg was not finished with her. 3 major operations. 14 months of her life spent as an inpatient in a hospital in the same town where she was working. 6 years in that place altogether. She spent most of the daylight at a sewing machine, making clothes and mending clothes for children who had nobody to do it for them. 7 years after the bomb, a magazine sent somebody out to that room in Beppu to photograph her. They sat her down at the sewing machine and asked her to turn her head and look at the camera. It was the same movement she had made at her desk the morning the bomb fell, and they had chosen it on purpose. Then they printed what she told them alongside the picture. She went back to Hiroshima once a year, she said, and every time it astonished her. The old feeling of the city was gone out of it. This was a different town going up over the top of the one she remembered. Even the new Peace Bridge did not sit right with her. And then the police car, and the 4 ribs, and the eye. There was compensation money coming from the police. Money like that runs out, and a nursery teacher's wage was never going to carry 2 people. So in the weeks after the accident, she qualified as a bookkeeper as well. He recovered. And the compensation money, the money that was never going to be enough for anything, bought him a place at a music school. He grew into a man who taught composition and mathematics to high school students. The plan was not needed. So she went back to the orphanage. The priest never stopped coming. Somewhere in those years, he put a question to her that she did not much care for. Was her whole life going to be like this, working as hard as this? Shouldn't she be married? Or if she was not going to marry, shouldn't she be a nun? Another answer, ready-made. The logic of it did nothing for her at the time. What stayed with her was the walking. A man in pain covering long distances on foot to sit with people who were not going anywhere. Now she did the walking. She went to the priest. By now he had taken Japanese citizenship and a Japanese name to go with it. And she told him she knew now that she would never marry, and that the time had come for her to enter a convent. She did not ask him whether. She asked him which. He named one on the far side of Hiroshima, at Misasa, the novitiate. Her mother superior asks her what she would do if she were told she had failed and would have to leave. She has been told to leave things before. A house with nobody in it. A man who wrote to her about butterflies and then did not write. A leg that had to be opened 3 times before it would carry her anywhere. A brother who turned out not to need her after all. Every future she has ever had was handed to her by somebody else, and every one of them was taken back the same way. And not once was she in the room when it was decided. So her mother superior asks her what she would do if she were told she had failed and had to leave. She says, "I would take hold of that beam there and hold on with all my strength." She was not sent away. In 1957, she took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and Toshiko Sasaki became Sister Dominique Sasaki. They sent her straight out of the novitiate to a home for the aged and the dying on Kyushu, and she stayed there more than 20 years. The work was sitting with people at the end of their lives. Nobody in that house died on their own. She held a view about the bomb that other survivors did not much like hearing. Too much attention was paid to the power of the thing, she thought, and not enough to the evil of the war that had reached for it. It was the lightly injured and the politicians, she said, who wanted to talk about the bomb. Years later, at a dinner in Tokyo, she stood up to speak. "I shall not dwell on the past," she said. "It is as if I had been given a spare life when I survived the bomb. But I prefer not to look back." Years before, a beam had been the thing lying on top of her. She never said the bomb sent her there. She said the bomb was where she found out what she was made of. Maybe she carried more of that day than she ever said. What she did say was that she would hold on.